What if the stories you told your friends around the table could actually genuinely change who you are? And what if your make-believe hero's journey, their wins, their epic fails, their moments of, oh crap, what do I do now, was really just a practice run for your own personal growth? We usually think of Dungeons & Dragons as a fun escape, a few hours of heroic fantasy. But it turns out it's way more than that. The game is a mirror, and the character arcs we build are powerful psychological tools that can help us figure out who we are, boost our mental health, and learn some deep truths about ourselves. Have you ever finished an intense D&D session and a little piece of your character just stuck with you? Their courage, their heartbreak, their big damn hero moment, it feels a little bit like it was yours. That's not just you getting swept up in the fantasy, by the way. It's a real phenomenon. And the players even have a name for it. It's called bleed. It's that feeling of emotional spillover between you and your character, and it's a huge clue that the stories you're telling might be doing more than just passing the time. They might be helping you grow in the real world. This is where the magic really happens. It's where fantasy crashes into reality, and where playing a game becomes a legitimate path to becoming a better you. Before your character can have an arc, you have to actually make them. And that process is a sneakily profound bit of self-exploration. Psychologists point out that the act of filling out a character sheet is a safe way to explore and test things out. Think about it. You're prompted to define personality traits, ideals, bonds, and flaws. What do I stand for? Who am I loyal to? What's my biggest weakness? By slapping these questions onto a fictional person, we give ourselves the freedom to answer with a kind of raw honesty that might feel way too scary otherwise. This is the first and maybe most important job of a D&D character. They are your own personal psychological sandbox, a place to play and experiment, and it turns out we tend to play in that sandbox in one of three main ways, each with its own perks for personal growth. First, you have characters that are just basically us. Our authentic selves. They're an extension of who we are right now, letting us tackle the game's problems with our own mindset. This might sound simple, but it's a great way to see our own limitations in action. When a player isn't ready for personal growth, their authentic self character gets stuck and predictable, showing us in real life time how a fear of evolving can hold us back. The second path that we see is often the most life-changing, is creating an idealized version of yourself. This is the character who has all the traits you wish you did. The rock-solid confidence, the razor-sharp wit, the bottomless well of courage. A shy person might create a charismatic bard who can talk their way out of pretty much anything. Someone who struggles with decisions might play a paladin who never ever hesitates. This isn't just daydreaming, it's a type of behavioral rehearsal. By acting out these idealized traits in a low-stakes game, you're essentially faking it till you make it. You're practicing bravery. You're trying on assertiveness for a few hours a week, and over time, that costume starts to feel like your own skin. Finally, you've got the psychological opposites. Playing a chaotic, messy rogue when you're a hyper-organized person in real life, or a deeply cynical warlock when you're a hopeless optimist. This path is the toughest, but it can lead to the biggest breakthroughs. It forces you to constantly step outside your own assumptions and see the world from a completely different angle, expanding your empathy and helping you understand parts of your own personality you never even knew existed. No matter which path you take, the character becomes a safe container to explore who you are. The beauty of this sandbox is just the safety net. If your character gets rejected, if they fail miserably, if they make a truly boneheaded mistake, the player is still okay, able to process it all from a safe distance. It's a laboratory for the self, where you can run experiments on your own identity without real-world consequences, all while pretending to be an elf looking for a magical sword. So if the character is the sandbox, the story is how we play. And this is where we get to the main engine of personal change in Dungeons & Dragons. That concept players call bleed. Bleed is the emotional and psychological spillover between a player and their character. It's why a character's heroic victory can leave you buzzing for days, and why a character's death can feel like a genuine loss. While bleed is a term that comes from the role-playing community, not an actual psychological textbook, therapists are increasingly recognizing and using the phenomenon it describes. In therapeutic Dungeons & Dragons groups, letting a person externalize their real-world struggles into a fictional character makes those difficult emotions seem much safer and easier to handle. Think of a player who deals with anxiety on a daily basis. They might create a character who's afraid to speak up. In the game, when the character has to say, "Persuade a stubborn king," the player feels a flicker of their real-world anxiety. But this time, in the game, it's in a supportive environment where their friends literally have their back. When the character succeeds, the player gets to share in that victory, creating a powerful, positive feedback loop. In a way, it works a lot like exposure therapy, letting players face their fears in a controlled and manageable setting. This is where a character arc can go from being just a story beat to a tool for personal growth. A real character arc isn't about what happens to the character, it's about how they change on the inside. It's the journey from one state of being to another. For instance, a character might start with a flaw like, "I'm a coward," and a good dungeon master can then introduce challenges that gently push on that flaw. Maybe at first, the character just has to stand their ground. And then, maybe they have to actually take charge and sit and save a friend. This is the real alchemy for Dungeons & Dragons, a positive character arc. It's where a flaw is overcome, becomes a lesson in personal growth for the player. And even a negative arc where a character is broken or corrupted becomes a powerful cautionary tale, letting the player explore dark themes without any personal risk. Through Bleed, the character's journey becomes the player's journey. And if you've ever had a character where their story taught you something about yourself, I want to hear about it. Drop it in the comments below, because those stories are what this is all about. It's why I'm making this video. And if you're digging this look into the psychology of gaming, do me a favor and hit that subscription button below. So far we focused on you and your character, but D&D isn't a solo game. It's a collaborative storytelling, and that's the third pillar of its psychological power. The way it builds empathy and social bonds. The story doesn't just happen in your head, it becomes to life in that shared space between everyone in the table. This means scary enough that you don't have total control. Your character arc isn't just a script, it's a living thing that gets pushed, pulled, and shaped to everyone else's choices. This is empathy in action. To get what you want in D&D, you have to practice social awareness and consider other characters' motivations. This directly translates into real-world empathy. In fact, one study found that D&D players showed statistically significant higher scores in both extroversion and openness to new experiences, which are traits tied to social engagement and flexibility. So much for the shy, loner in the basement stereotype that D&D players typically get. The Dungeon Master is the master facilitator here. Just look at the massively popular show like Critical Role, where the most legendary story moments are almost always tied directly into a character's personal journey. When a DM weaves individual backstories in the main plot, it sends a powerful message. Your personal story matters as much as the quest to kill the big bad guy. This dynamic turns the game into a powerful support system. The friendships you build on a shared adventure are forged on teamwork, mutual vulnerability, and cheering each other on. For people who struggle with social anxiety or find it hard to make friends, say, this game provides a structured, low-pressure space for real social interaction. It looks a lot like group therapy, just with more fireballs and fewer copays. Ultimately, a great character arc usually comes down to a meaningful choice. The cowardly fighter has to choose: run or stand and fight for their friends. The greedy rogue has to choose: take the gold or save the town. The DM's job isn't to force that choice, but to create situations where a character's internal conflicts collide and a decision must be made. Making that choice and seeing the rest of the group react to it, the player doesn't just tell a story about change, they live it together. So when we sit down to play Dungeons & Dragons, we're doing so much more than just rolling dice and yelling at each other about the rules. We are taking part in a complex act of creation, self-discovery, and connection. We start by building a psychological sandbox, where we start by building a character that lets us try on a different version of ourselves. We rehearse being braver or wittier, or even being more decisive until those traits start to feel more like our own. Then, through the powerful force of emotional bleed, our character's story becomes our story. Their struggles teach us lessons, and their triumphs fuel our own growth. Finally, we do it all together, building deep empathy by seeing the world through other people's eyes and forging friendships that last long after the campaign ends. The character arc, it really does tie it all together. It's the narrative engine for our own personal development. And the stories we tell at the table don't just stay at the table, they become a part of us. Playing D&D isn't just escape from reality. It's a powerful, playful, and profound way to practice and improve it. The character arc really is the one that ties it all together. It's the narrative, the engine for our own personal development. The stories we tell at the table don't just stay at the table, they become a part of us. Playing D&D isn't just escape from reality. It's a powerful, playful, and profound way to practice and keep improving it. What was your most transformative character arc? And what did your hero's journey say about you? Make sure to put that down below, and if you believe in the power of play, make sure to subscribe and join us on our next adventure.